What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Six Borough Sports Podcast. I am your host, Rick Guerino, and we have to get this episode off started by addressing the 700,000-pound gorilla in the corner of the room. Steve Tisch and Josh Harris, what in God's name are we doing here? I mean, are we kidding? Is it so difficult for billionaires to not associate with pedophiles? What on earth is going on? Steve Tisch, I guess we can get started with you. This is such an embarrassment for the Giants, man. After all the progress that we made in these last few weeks, hiring John Harbaugh, giving him the keys to the kingdom, and it really seemed like we were on the up and up. And not only have you been an incompetent owner this entire time, you are buddy with Jeffrey Epstein, it turns out. I don't know what to say to this. This is embarrassing for the fan base in every way, shape, or form. I'm speechless. Mr. Mara, I hope you see this and you take these allegations and these conversations very seriously. I hope Steve Tisch's days of ownership of the New York Giants are numbered in the single digits, because this is unacceptable. And the same goes for Josh Harris of the New Jersey Devils. I mean, my God, you can say all you want that the interactions were business related and staff arranged, but at this point, you had to have known who he was, especially post 2008, where he had a conviction to his name. Why are all of these guys in Epstein's orbit to begin with? This is so not how I wanted to open up this podcast today. I wanted to start bitching about the Yankees, which I'm going to get into very soon. But this is just so next level of things that fans shouldn't have to be even contemplating. It really isn't hard to do. I don't have to be a billionaire to tell you you shouldn't associate with pedophiles. What a fucking novel thought. And now we have to have this hanging over our heads. I don't even know where to go with that, man. This guy's reputation is well known. And it just completely erases credibility from the organizations to be having in owners who would even look to engage in anywhere close to that type of orbit. I'm sick to my stomach. It's absolutely disgusting. Just the thought of them even being in the same room together. They couldn't have even talked. Just being in the same room together, it means they had the same circles. And that is disgusting. And that's all I have to say about that. As Forrest Gump once said, keeping it in the theme of embarrassing ownership, it does look like Hal Steinbrenner and the Yankees are perfectly content with this roster as currently constructed. And Brian Cashman brazenly goes out this week and somehow tops it off with some of the most tone-deaf comments I've seen from him, and he's made a lot of them in the past recent years defending his boneheaded moves, where he challenges anyone to say that this year's roster is the same as last year's roster. Okay, Brian, let's play that game. Outside of Garrett Cole coming back midway through the season, assuming his recovery from Tommy John goes perfectly okay, and then hoping he's even 75% of the pitcher he used to be before the elbow injury, what exactly has changed here? You're banking on two relievers that you traded for who nobody knows the name of and calling them big arms, while the rest of the league has actually acquired proven players to improve. The Blue Jays and the Dodgers have gone out and made significant improvements to their lineups and to their teams. Meanwhile, we're stuck with hoping Garrett Cole comes back to form after Tommy John, 1 year removed from it, not even the same year. We're still extremely left-handed. The infield is remaining the same. There's no true leadoff hitter that we have. Don't tell me Trent Grisham is a leadoff hitter. The bottom third of the lineup, if it remains the same, if there's no improvements made there, as currently constructed, is a complete black hole. And outside of Judge, Bellinger, and Stanton, assuming Giancarlo's body cooperates, this lineup is nothing but question marks. Jason Dominguez, we're not even really going to give him runway because his roster is clogged up with stopgaps and redundancy in the outfield. So if we can't even get Jason Dominguez playing time, where does Spencer Jones fit into this picture? What's the plan for him? He's 25 this year. He's the same age that Judge was when he was a rookie. It doesn't look like they have a plan for him. They keep floating his name in trades, but they're not ever actually going to pull the trigger. And let's be clear about Cody Bellinger, too. Signing Cody Bellinger was the bare minimum this offseason. That is not something to flex to your fan base. That is not a championship all-in push. That is just doing the least amount of work that was expected of you to justify even showing up to a press conference this offseason. Puffing your chest out and acting like this roster is all of a sudden able to contend for a World Series with the Blue Jays or the Dodgers, even Seattle, even San Diego. It's such a slap in the face to the fans of this organization. It's an insult to their intelligence. Sure, you got a more clearly defined bullpen hierarchy. We have David Bednar as our closer, and I'm sure he's not going to be blowing 8+ games this year, like Devin Williams so kindly did for us last year. Sure, we improved defensively at third base with Ryan McMahon, but he's still a 200 hitter. But let's not kid ourselves. This team is nowhere near the level of the Dodgers or even the Blue Jays. It's not close. Those teams, like I said already, made tangible, aggressive improvements. Signing Kyle Tucker, signing Okamoto. The ownership didn't hide behind the luxury tax as a shield for you to be able to make any big moves outside of Cody Bellinger. I don't want to care that this is some of the highest payroll we've had. That's not a flex. That just means we've misallocated resources everywhere else in the roster. Right now, Aaron Judge is on the best contract in baseball. Cashman having the nerve to come out and gaslight the fans into believing that meaningful additions were made. Like, what point does this cycle end? How many more times are we going to hear that the Yankees checked in on or they're interested in a player only to watch that guy get traded elsewhere or sign with a different team 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours later? It is Groundhog Day. Literally. Today's Groundhog Day. But it's also been Groundhog Day every single offseason with this front office. And I know you're tired of me hearing me rant about the Yankees every single episode, so I'm going to move on. But it's hard to be positive when the direction of the most valuable franchise in sports is the way that it is. And right now, it's just where things stand. And as of this weekend, let's be honest, both Devils and Rangers seasons are now effectively over. New Jersey showed a little bit of life over the past week or two, but reality came clocking in real fast with them losing to the Jets and Senators, two teams who are currently outside the playoff picture, and neither of them really having to work that hard to beat New Jersey. Even to win over Nashville, which they had to miraculously pull out of their ass to even get to overtime, they were barely hanging on. That is not a statement. And once again, we're watching the same movie with this New Jersey Devils team for the third straight season. Team consistently playing down to lesser competition. When things get tough, when they face any bit of adversity, they fold like paper tigers. It looks like they've checked out. And honestly, I think the Devils need to take a page out of the Rangers book right now and seriously consider blowing up their core. For the Devils to make the playoffs at this point, they need to win something of like 24 of their 35 remaining games. And we all know for a fact that they're just not capable of it. So let's stop pretending. It's this run that this core has had is dead. It is over. Nico Hischier and Brett Pesce are just about my only two untouchables on the team right now. Everyone else, you are open for business. Jack Hughes, you're hurt again. Color me shocked. Timo Meier has not lived up to his contract a single year since he's had it. Sure, he's had months at a time, which seems like it's only March, where he could ever do anything. Jesper Bratt is fine for a 6th-round pick. He's exactly what you like. You'd take that every single day of the week, but I feel like he's not helping this Devils team get over the hump. He is so streaky this season. Dawson Mercer has been wildly inconsistent. And year after year after year since 2023, this team has been less than the sum of its parts. And I really thought that Sheldon Keefe was going to be a home run hire when the Devils first made that move. But his system just doesn't fit with this roster. It doesn't maximize the strengths of being a super fast team while being able to score off the rush. He wants him to hold the puck way too much. Their zone entries are unclean. And it doesn't fix their weaknesses. They aren't tougher to play against. They used to be able to defend pretty well, but then the tape got out on them, and every team has been able to score on them at will. And once again, Tom Fitzgerald, our fearless leader GM, has gone radio silent, which is especially convenient given that the Olympic break is only a couple days away. The entire operation needs to be retooled. Outside of high draft picks, high obvious draft picks, which frankly really haven't been hitting that much either. The Devils have exactly one homegrown forward on the roster right now who is a legitimate bright spot outside of Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt. But they have been on the team for several years at this point. Shout out to Lenny Hamineho. He's been a breath of fresh air for the team. He's actually looked like he's belonging in the NHL, and it's been a very long time since the Devils have had an exciting forward prospect that has actually lived up to somewhat of the hype. And it says that much more because he's standing out on a roster that has starved itself for internal development, which it hasn't had in the past couple of years. Now, across the river, which is basically, it's frozen solid right now. You might be able to walk across the Hudson River at this point. It is so freaking cold. And I'm sick of it. I cannot wait for, doesn't even need to be a 70-degree day. Can we get a 30-degree day for once? Like one time in the next couple of weeks, and we break 30 degrees at any point, that would feel like it's summer right there. I might go out in a tank top and shorts if it breaks 30 degrees. But back to the Rangers. Their season is also over. They just got swept by the Islanders in back-to-back games. The Islanders are now 3-0 against them this season. And the Rangers really didn't put up much of a fight in either game. They've been circling the drain for a while, but when you let your in-state rival push you around like that twice in a row in the same week, that's a brutal, brutal look. And I don't want to hear anything about Mike Sullivan. I think Mike Sullivan is a great coach. He's working with what he has. He's a great coach, and his job security shouldn't even be in the conversation at this point. It's a roster problem, not what is behind the bench for the New York Rangers. Panarin, he's being held out for precautionary trade reasons, so I fully expect him to be moved before the Olympics or shortly thereafter. I know I said this once before, but for the love of God, do not let the Carolina Hurricanes get their crubby little paws on him. That fan base does not need another reason to be the most insufferable losers in the league. I am so sick and tired of those inbred morons puffing their chest out and acting like they've accomplished anything. You guys have won one more Eastern Conference championship game than the Devils have since 2012. One more. And you've had the way better team. No one wants to hear it from you. And shout out to the Islanders. Like, they're the only New York team that's really doing consistently well. They are sitting at third in the division and are basically the only team that we can look to for any inspiration or any happiness at this point. And I hate it. No one cares about the Islanders except if you're Long Island. Matthew Schaefer is a stud. He's awesome. He looks so legit for a first-round pick. It must be nice to have a first-round pick in New York actually come in and contribute effectively and look like he's going to be a star in the league his entire career. Ilya Sorokin looks like he's back to being a Vezina candidate. And Patrick Waugh has those guys playing and bought into whatever structure he has implemented. They are playing good hockey. And all of a sudden, after, years of just mediocrity and Lou holding the team back, the Islanders look like a team that people will want to join and have fun on in the future. They can be out of the spotlight of New York City, but still have one of the easiest travel schedules in the league. They weren't even supposed to be this good this early, and yet here they are. The best part is their future looks brighter out in Belmont. And right now, that's no other team's outlook at this point in New York City. Speaking of teams that have turned it around, the Knicks look pretty rough for the past couple weeks. But as of right now, they are playing the Lakers at this moment. I'm not sure what the score is. They've ripped up 5 straight games. 5 straight U's. Now, let's be fair, though. 4 of those wins came against the Kings, the Raptors, the Blazers, the Nets. So it's not exactly the best competition in the NBA at this point. But I'm not going to fault them for beating the teams in front of them. They needed those wins desperately. And this stretch has allowed the Knicks to hold their place at the top of the East, where they sit at second place, tied right now with Boston. Detroit is clearly the best team in the East at this point. They've separated themselves. I think the Knicks are 5 games back of them as of this recording, and it doesn't look like anyone is going to be catching them anytime soon unless they have a losing streak of their own. So for the Knicks, it's just not even at this point. You can't be chasing first, but just making sure that you stay afloat at where you are. And this is where things are going to get interesting because the schedule they have coming up is absolutely brutal. After the Lakers they have tonight, it goes from the Nuggets, Pistons, Celtics, Pacers, Sixers, Pistons again, Rockets, Bulls, and then the Cavs. That is way harder than their last 5 games that they technically have the Wizards on that too, but we're not taking them seriously. No one's scared of Trae Young, and he has a worse hairline. This next run that the Knicks have is going to be extremely telling of how the rest of this season is going. If the Knicks can just tread water, win about half of those games over that stretch, I'm going to consider that a win with how poorly they have been playing over the last couple weeks. If they can go 500, I will be ecstatic. But if they steal a couple games that they're not supposed to, on top of staying 500, they punch above their weight for just a week or two. That's the kind of stretch that galvanizes a locker room. That's when the team starts thinking, all right, maybe we actually can do something with this group. Maybe we can go back to our winning ways, how we were in the beginning of the season. We know what we're going to be getting from Jalen Brunson and OG Anunoby every night. That's not the question. This season's ceiling comes down to whether Karl Anthony Towns or Mikal Bridges does what they're capable of and do what we traded them for to do. If they do, this team is going to be legit come April, May, June. If they don't, we know that this team's last 5 games have been just fool's gold. Now, with college basketball, we've seen an uptick in the area recently, especially with Seton Hall finally getting back on track. They won these last 2 games. They didn't make it super easy, but they won, and they essentially saved their season for now. They're not out of the woods yet. They have Villanova in Philly coming up on Wednesday. Maybe Shaw has these guys a bit more prepared to play than the first game that they played in Newark where they got blown out by 20 points. It wasn't by 20 points. It was by 9 points, but it felt like it was 20 before Villanova let their foot off the gas and they realized the game was over. Then after that, they have Creighton in Nebraska on that Saturday. I don't have to tell you how hard of an environment Creighton is to play in. But if they can pull off a win there, then I think they really position themselves well for an at-large bid towards the end of the season. They're going to need to win that game and at least 4 or 5 more to make themselves at least comfortably towards the back of the field. Maybe even a last 4 in. Maybe we see them in Dayton. But they're going to need to win some games that they probably shouldn't to reestablish themselves at the top of the Big East and within the committee's eyes. St. John's, you're officially a top 25 team again this past week, and you guys have handled your business well, winning in Xavier and at Butler. Fully expecting the Johnnies to hover around this. They look good right now. I'm not expecting really any change. They might give UConn a run for their money at the end of the season, but until someone takes UConn down, UConn's going to keep being UConn. Unless something drastic happens, they are a legitimate threat to win their 3rd title in 4 years. And I'm fully expecting them to win the Big East tournament and the Big East outright. It's their tournament and conference to lose. Now, given the current landscape of college basketball, I wanted to bring on a good friend of mine. His name is Justin Rubin. We're going to talk about all things NIL, overseas, as well as the recent epidemic of pro players coming back to play in college sports. So looking forward to having you guys listen to this. And now, Justin Rubin. All right, everyone, let's welcome in Justin Rubin. He is a good friend of mine. He is an actual FIBA agent right now, and I wanted to bring him in to talk about the state of college basketball and how it's affecting his line of work, as well as the actual landscape of college basketball and how it is forever changed since with this year. It just seems like it has gone completely off the rails, and we'll get more into that in a minute. But Justin, introduce yourself to the people, tell them about yourself, what you do, what ProConnect is, how you got your start there.
Yeah, awesome. So for those who don't really know what ProConnect is, a few years ago, when I was going to Queens College back in 2017, I was a walk-on on the basketball team. And back then I saw that there was a market for professional basketball outside the NBA. I didn't fully understand what markets there were in terms of leagues, countries like that, job openings. So I just took about a year to do research on the overseas market and then eventually created a social media page, ProConnect. Started posting players' highlights, essentially guys that were undervalued, didn't have enough exposure, mainly like Division 3, Division 2 players who performed really well in college. Eventually, posting these players' highlights got traction and led to one of my friends, Diego, getting signed to a contract. Eventually, he signed a contract to play in Puerto Rico. And from there, I just realized that there was a power of social media as well as connecting with teams overseas, researching the overseas job market. So that's when ProConnect started to really evolve. And I started using social media to connect with teams overseas, get players jobs. And since then, it's really evolved to an ecosystem of college basketball players who can't play in the NBA that are looking to play at the professional level. And I connect them to those job opportunities overseas.
That is actually incredible that you were able to start that entirely on your own. And obviously you had help, you had your intro into the really high level of the basketball world. You played at a college level, so you understood most of these guys that were going to play college ball really didn't want to go back into the real world. They wanted to keep that as their main source of income and their actual careers. For you to be able to have done that is really awesome. But the real reason, we wanted to get on here and talk about things is that landscape for you has completely changed, especially over the last 3 years, with NIL being the thing that it is now. And players are finally being allowed to be compensated, which I think for the most part we can all agree was way overdue. But there has been so little regulation alongside of all of this. Now, from your perspective, how healthy would you consider the current system?
I would say it's definitely very unhealthy. And kind of going back to what you said, no regulation. There really is no regulation right now. I think everyone wanted players to get paid, and I can agree that they deserve to get paid. But I think it's gotten to the point where it's getting out of hand. I think everyone really envisioned players going to college, getting money off of obviously getting recruited to go to the school if you're a good enough recruit and the school can afford to pay you, but also, jersey sales, signing, stuff like that, like the traditional sources of income that an athlete with a platform you'd expect to leverage. But right now, it's getting a little out of hand, and there's really no way to have a player that you're recruiting to have them stay for 4 years. There's no loyalty anymore. It's almost like a year to year free agency, almost like the NBA. And it's tough because a lot of these players now that are making millions and millions of dollars and certain situations they get into, they only go for the money and it doesn't work out. So there's a lot of factors, and we can go all day talking about the positives and the negatives of it. But I think that when you go too extreme with anything, then it gets out of hand. And I think that's kind of what we're experiencing now.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, we even just saw Amari Bailey, who is looking to
Yeah.
return to college right now. We've already had a couple players come back on that went professional, like have signed NBA contracts that maybe never really made it. But now we're getting an actual full on NBA player, someone that has seen 10 games of NBA action, decide that I'm not doing well here. I'm going to go back to college because I still have eligibility left. Amari Bailey is only 21 years old. When you see a situation like that as an agent, what is your reaction?
They gave Charles Bediako from Alabama eligibility. He played in the G League. He didn't ever actually play NBA minutes. He played in the summer league. That doesn't count. But, Amari Bailey got actual NBA minutes. So I don't think he should be able to. But there's that line where it's like, what should be allowed and what shouldn't be allowed. And because things have gotten so out of hand, it's one of those things that kind of is like it might be allowed. But yeah, I don't think it should be. Once you play against NBA level players and then you go back to college, it's just not the same. And it's not fair. So that's my opinion, but I don't know. Other people might think differently.
So when the NCAA is deciding to allow not only full grown adults that have played professional basketball, but those that have been within the NBA themselves going into college basketball, what kind of message does this send to, let's say, a high school recruit when they're competing against guys that are older, more physically mature, already have professional experience? I know you're obviously going to have your 5-star recruits. You're going to have guys like Zion Williamson, and the absolute freaks are going to go to the NBA one day that are coming out of high school. But for the normal college basketball recruit who has no chance of going pro, where does this put them in a mindset?
Yeah. So yeah, right now, those top guys that you were saying, always going to be there. That's why the McDonald's All American game is a thing. Every year, they're still going to have your McDonald's All Americans, which most likely, or if you look at the past McDonald's All Americans, most of them if not a large percentage of them go to the NBA. So you're still going to have those guys, but then you have the guys, like you said, who aren't going to be pros, but could still make a career out of it or get a free education. And then maybe kind of going back to like where I could step in is like I could help them play overseas, or another FIBA agent can help them play overseas. But for those types of guys, it's going to be so much harder to get a college scholarship out of high school. I mean, maybe you could play Division II and settle, play really well, and then try to move your way up. But the direct pathway from high school to a Division I scholarship is not going to be as common anymore because these schools are going to look to recruit grown men through the portal, whether they're coming from a mid major or another high major where they're not getting a lot of minutes. So, one thing I've seen a lot of guys have been reaching out to me, even at the college level, is I tell them, listen, if you can't play at a Power 5 school, settle and play at a mid major. Be the main guy at a mid major, play a lot of minutes, get a lot of action experience, and then maybe you could transfer after that. Or some guys go to the JUCO level. They'll play at the JUCO level for 2 years. They transfer, they get a scholarship. So there's a lot of different ways guys can now navigate it. It's just you might have to take different sacrifices and steps to get to like your goal.
Right. So, with this in mind, how else do you think that this is undermining what we could call the original purpose of college basketball as a developmental and evaluation space? Because you used to be able to go into a program at 17, 18 years old, stay 4 years, transfer once if you had the opportunity. And even if you did transfer, you did have to sit out a year. Now it's no wait period for if you transfer, there's no penalty. It really has evolved the college landscape into being what is essentially a professional league. However, players aren't being developed, at least in my opinion, the way that they used to. They're not as NBA ready as they used to be. So how do you feel that this is, you know, undermining that?
Yeah, I mean, it completely undermines it. And, if you're a diehard fan at a school, like for you, for example, say you're a diehard Seton Hall fan, or me, I'm a St. John's fan, and you're looking at a kid in high school and you get this top recruit, you really want him. Your envision is for the kid to be there for 4 years if he's not an NBA player, develop, and hopefully compete for a national championship or a Big East title, whatever it is. You're not seeing that anymore. There's no real loyalty anymore because you can transfer in the portal and you can get paid, or you go to a different situation. You don't play that, you get recruited to a school and the coach and you don't you don't get along together. And then all of a sudden now these kids are like, oh, I want to transfer now. It's not like what it used to be where guys would stick it through. Like maybe you don't play your first year, then you get a little bit of minutes your second year, and then come your third year, maybe you're the main guy. But now it's like you said, it's just free agency. It's professional basketball. So it's going to be really hard to see guys go from their freshman year to their senior year at the same school.
So in your opinion, how do you if you were in charge of college basketball at this point, how do you resolve this? What type of guardrails or eligibility rules are you putting in place that would actually make sense without punishing players' ability to transfer if they're in a bad situation or being
Yeah.
able to get them paid what they're worth?
Yeah. Listen, I think players obviously should get paid what they're worth. Like, there's no question about that. I think a player should be able to transfer at least once. I don't think they should be able to transfer more than once. I think there needs to be a certain reason. Obviously, if it's like medical or it's certain situation, like there's always situations where it's going to be protected, and like maybe there'll be like some leeway there. But I don't think that if you get recruited to a school and maybe the coach promises you something and like you don't play well or another recruit outplays you and then you want to transfer, like I don't think that's really the right situation. If you're going to do it, fine, you could do it once. You're young, you make mistakes, but like you can't do it more than once and then all of a sudden go to 3 4 different schools. Like that's my opinion. I think there's no loyalty in that situation. So I think, yeah, you allow a player to transfer once, and that's really it. That's really what it should be. I mean, I don't see why a kid should be able to go to 4 different schools.
I definitely agree with that. It really has created so much chaos, and it doesn't seem like there is going to be any relief of this anytime soon. I think these bigger schools are fully taking advantage of us being able to use their boosters and their actual school funding to their advantage to be able to pay these players as much as they can. And they recognize that this is giving schools, bigger schools, I would say, that have budget but have no longer been or have not been basketball schools in the past. It gives them an advantage now. You see schools like Alabama, who were never typically a basketball school in the past, and now all of a sudden they are top 25 every single year. I know they're technically having a down year right now, but when they're able to pay Charles Bediako to come back from the G League and be on their roster, and allow them to contend for not only an SEC championship, but they probably have Elite Eight ceiling to their roster this year. And not only that, but the fact that these players are able to come in mid-season, it's completely insane. If you wanted to have these kids come in off season, I could maybe get behind that, but I'd still probably not want to allow it. But the fact that they're able to just join up in the middle of the season whenever they want, that just seems like a huge competitive discrepancy to me, and it doesn't seem fair to any of the kids. What if you're someone on that roster who was playing good minutes, and then all of a sudden you have this guy coming in that with pro experience just taking your roster spot, and that fuels them to want to transfer, and the vicious cycle continues, right?
Yeah. There's also the debate too, so like you got Charles Bediako coming back from the G League and he's a pro, he's playing college basketball. But another thing that's happening now too is there's a lot of European guys who have played professional basketball in Europe at a high level and are now coming back and they're playing college basketball. So then it's like, okay, well then if they can do it, why can't Charles Bediako? I know like the G League and certain leagues overseas are a little bit different in terms of like physicality and competition, but for the most part, I mean, there's a debate there for sure too, because they're technically pros as well. So
Absolutely.
where's the
So,
line?
and getting into that for your line of work, how has that changed your perspective on things? Are you seeing more players stay in college longer than they typically would because they could probably earn more money than they could closer to home? Are you seeing more guys more willing to go overseas after their college career has ended? Take me into that.
Yeah. So it's definitely affecting it in a number of ways. So you're seeing guys stay in college longer. Years ago, you'd have the one and dones, obviously the NBA players like Dwight Howard's, LeBron's, like all those guys we knew would be in the NBA right away. But then you'd have guys who would try to leave after 1 year to chase the money and it wouldn't work out because they're just not ready for the NBA. Now you have guys who are staying longer because if they go to the NBA and they're on a rookie contract, they're getting paid more to stay in college and enter the portal and go to like a power five with the collective money they're getting. So, yeah, it's prolonging the amount of time that these guys are spending in college. But then also the way it's shifting the overseas landscape is you have guys who are making millions in college. Most of them aren't going to make it to the NBA regardless. The percentage of players to make it to the NBA are so small that these guys are going to make millions in college and then they're going to graduate and they're going to be like, okay, now what? Let me play overseas. And most of them are going to get an offer of like $2,000 a month, let's say, which most rookies get overseas, let's say. And a lot of them are not going to want to play that for that amount of money because of all the money they made in college. So it shifts the entire market where now it opens up doors for maybe Division 2 or Division 3, or maybe lower to mid-major players who wouldn't have gotten that opportunity because now they're getting it because other players may not want to go for it because they're staying in college longer. So it really affects the entire market from top to bottom.
So, have you heard from your end? Is there any incentives being put in place by these overseas teams, these European leagues, Puerto Rican league, like where your friend Diego you said was playing? Are they able to make it so that they are more desirable of a career option as opposed to staying in college longer? Or are they just not really able to deal with this type of chaos at the moment? Are they still adapting?
And so you're saying in terms of like being able to keep the player at the pro level instead of allowing them to go to college?
Or even just saying, like, hey, we understand that you've got your 4 years of college done and you were making X amount. We can match that if you want to come play for us.
Okay. Yeah. So no, so the thing about that is not every market overseas, and this is kind of where we dive into overseas basketball, can pay the amount of money that these players want. So
Mhm.
like Puerto Rico, for example, pays a lot of money, but certain countries don't. So most players coming out of college, unless you went to a Power Five school, you're not really going to get paid a lot coming out. Say you went to a mid-major like a Monmouth or a Hofstra, for example, you could play overseas. You're making a decent living to start, but you're not going to make anywhere near what a player would make transferring to a Power Five, SEC, or Big Ten school. So the market really matters overseas in terms of like money, and that's really what dictates everything. But regardless of what school you go to, you're probably not going to make a lot of money as a rookie overseas.
I mean, it's really unfortunate because it seems like a lot of these overseas teams have really, taken the opportunity to give these guys out of college a career. I mean, I know a lot of these guys that go the full 5 years, including a grad year. They typically will have jobs out of the NBA, but it seems like they have been able to at least carve out a career overseas as well. And it just seems like that's going to go extinct unless they do something about it.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to say what'll happen because now we have the NBA who's potentially forming their own league in Europe, and that'll shake some things. So that'll definitely put some money into the overseas market. But what will it do for those lower paying jobs for the lower paying players? So yeah, we'll see. I don't think that overseas basketball is going anywhere, but there's definitely going to be a shift with what's going on in NIL and the NBA and overseas.
If you were playing a part in developing that Euro NBA league, how would you go about it in terms of recruiting players from colleges? Is it going to be G League players that it serves as more of a developmental league? Take me through your thoughts there.
So I think what's going to happen now is they're going to use the existing like infrastructure of European basketball, and you're
Hmm.
just going to have teams break off from the current league. So essentially, what happens in college basketball, where guys, so like let's say BYU for example, BYU, I'm almost positive for a long time they were in the Mountain West Conference. I could be
That
wrong,
sounds
but I'm
about
pretty
right. Yeah,
sure
I think so.
they just now they're in the Big 12.
Hmm.
Stuff like that, they obviously got paid to go to the Big 12. It's a better conference for them. It's a bigger school, they recruit, they make more money. Same thing's going to happen overseas where you're going to see, maybe a team like FC Barcelona or Real Madrid or whatever it is, Fenerbahce, which is a Turkish team. They'll maybe break out of the Euro League. Okay, we're not part of the Euro League. We're now part of NBA Europe because they're paying us all this money. You're still going to play a similar schedule, but you're just going to be like under a different league. And obviously, you're going to get a ton more support from the NBA in terms of everything that the NBA has to offer and what they're pushing in Europe. So I think that's what's going to happen is you're going to see pre-existing teams break out of their leagues and then join NBA Europe, which for me seems like the easiest thing than starting teams from scratch and like recruiting players. But there's so much talent in the world. You could just build a league from scratch and recruit guys and start new teams.
So, how do you think that ends up competing with college basketball as a whole? Are they going to be able to recruit players out of high school from the United States to go play there? Because if that's the case, then that shifts the dynamic 180 degrees again.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on salaries. I think ultimately, as long as colleges are going to be paying these kids this type of money, most kids are going to want to go to college and get paid. One, they're going to have a college experience at a crazy school, which is awesome. And
Mm.
two, they're going to get paid a ton of money and they're probably still going to make it to the NBA. So I think that's not going to change, but I think there's still going to be potential for guys to maybe you're good enough to play at the pro level. Okay, you go to school for 4 years in high school. Let's play for a year in NBA Europe, and then you could come back and play college basketball because right now it doesn't really seem like there's any issues with eligibility after playing pro anyway. So I think that's what it'll be. And then another thing that I thought would be interesting is say you get drafted by an NBA team straight out of high school, and that NBA team doesn't think you're ready and they want you to develop. I think NBA teams potentially could have agreements with colleges where they send that player to the college of their agreement to have them develop, almost like the NIL or the G League, and then they develop in college and then go back to the NBA when they're ready. So we'll see.
It seems like there still needs to be, at the end of the day, a lot of regulation that's put in place.
Yes. Yep.
I'm not smart enough to come up with that
I don't think
in
any
one
of us
podcast
are.
session.
Yeah.
But the NCAA really needs to understand that they are no longer the bastion that they claim to have been of pure, fair college or collegiate sports and pretending to be about the player. They need to be treating this as a business. And I think if they do what you say, like being able to transfer only one time, and then if you do transfer, you do have to have that waiting period again, making sure that there are some sort of guardrails in place, maybe agents for these college players that are able to effectively meet in the middle for the universities as well as the players and be able to get them fair contracts and have these players honor these contracts. And I think we should say the same with coaching too. We shouldn't be seeing these college coaches jump around wherever they are. If they should be getting rid of fully guaranteed contracts completely for these coaches. They should not be able to jump from college to college as soon as they see a better offer come away, because then it sets us a bad example for the players. You see it happening in college football with Lane Kiffin, who his team nearly made the national title game. They nearly went to the national title game
Yeah. I
after
mean,
Lane Kiffin left.
crazy. Do you think that, you know, these kids, these coaches that play in March Madness and like you see these Cinderella stories, right? It's almost guaranteed every year. You have your Oral Roberts or you have your St. Peter's a few years ago. And St. Peter's, look, the guys at Seton Hall now, but that's almost like an interview process in itself to these big major schools that are recruiting and who needs a new coach. So in that situation, do you think it's fair for a coach to say, okay, I'm finally getting the opportunity I worked my whole life for, let me leave, versus a guy like Lane Kiffin leaving an already amazing school and an amazing conference for basically his rival? I think that's a little different, but what do you think about a guy leaving after like a Cinderella run to then chase their dream at a bigger school?
I mean, coming from my current coach, my favorite team, Seton Hall Pirates, like I absolutely, I think that is how you're going to be finding talent anyway. I mean, I feel like coaches that have been coming from mid majors into bigger programs through these Cinderella runs has been happening for forever. But I do think if you're having like a Mark Pope or a Nate Oates going, or a Coach Cal switching up universities every 3 years because they're just bored or they're not seeming like they're getting what they want from a university. They should be having to fulfill out their contracts before they're allowed to enter any other talks like that. The mid majors is completely different. I think it's essentially your opportunity as a minor league coach to get to the major leagues, right? But when you're already in the major leagues, let's be real here. If you're going from Kentucky to Arkansas, that are one state away, I think my geography might not be off.
It's close enough.
Yeah, it's close enough. It's middle of America. It's
I'm sure the money's not
within
that
that
much
Kentucky,
different.
Kansas, Louisville, Arkansas, Nebraska area where, they're all basically the same to me. I guess the last question I have for you, Justin,
Yeah.
with your knowledge of the landscape and your foresight into what you believe is going to happen in college basketball, if you were to provide guidance for a 17 or an 18-year-old kid that is going to be playing college basketball at the Division 1 level, what is the first thing you would tell them to consider when it comes to college and overseas career, even the pro route?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is don't always think, and this is coming from an agent, which is crazy enough to say, but seeing everything that happens in the overseas market, the college market with agents, don't always rush into signing with an agent. You don't need an agent right away to negotiate every little deal for you. You're 17 years old. Like you're going to college at first, one, to develop, two, most guys, if this is not your thought, you're really going there to get an education because odds are, even if you play overseas, that's not lasting forever. You're going to need a backup plan. So go to pick a school based on the degree you're going to get. And then also, obviously you need to develop because now physically, like the guys you're going to compete with are basically going to be pro level players now, versus years ago, you're probably competing against guys your age. So if you have the chance to get recruited out of high school, make sure you're working out like as much as you can and playing against older guys so you can develop. But yeah, like going back to also just like what I said about not signing with an agent right away is like make sure you have the right people in your circle that you're going to make the right decisions around. You don't want an agent who's only going to sign with you because they want to make money off of you and put you in situations that are only going to benefit them, because you have to put yourself in situations that are going to benefit yourself as well. Um, and then if you're a top recruit in the country, you don't need an agent. Like you're going to be able to go, you can be an agent for yourself. Like you negotiate your own deals, your family does it for you. Obviously there's situations there that who knows, but like in that situation, you don't need to sign with an agent. So I would just take things slow and obviously enjoy it because right away you don't have to focus on playing professional basketball. You should focus on playing college, and then as you develop, then the pro conversation comes. But right away, just focus on basketball and college.
That very well said, Justin. So I just want to thank you for taking the time out to meet with me. This was a blast. I hope you had fun. I'm sure I will have you on again very soon. We're going to talk probably some March Madness as we get deeper into February once the seeding becomes a little bit more clear and we're seeing who the true top dogs of each conference are. I would love to have you back on to talk about that
Yeah, yeah.
and some March Madness predictions.
I'm sure St. John's will be ahead of Seton Hall at the time.
I'm sure they will too. And, I'm not thrilled about where Seton Hall is at the moment, considering how hot they started the season, but
I was
I'm
gonna say,
hoping that they could squeak out at least 6 more wins through the rest of the season. That should put them at least in the last four in conversation.
I think they've earned it. We'll see what happens, but I think they're like a March Madness team. But I think the Big East tournament would be a huge test as well if they can make like a deep run in the Big East tournament.
If they win 2 games in the Big East tournament, Shaheen has yet to win a Big East tournament game since he's been a
Really?
coach of Seton Hall basketball.
Wow,
So
was
I
that
would
3 years
really
now?
like to see him get that monkey off his back this year. And if he does, I
Yeah.
think we could see the team actually make some noise. But yeah, St. John's is looking good right now, man. They're on a roll. 25 in the
Yeah.
nation right now. They'll probably go higher because they're going to have to get Villanova in there somewhere.
Yeah. We'll see what happens, but it's right around the corner. It goes quick this season.
Yes, it does. So, all right, man. It was great talking to you. We will set up something soon for this.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right.
Cool. Bye.
Talk soon.
All right. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment. You know the drill. And until next time, stay warm. I'll see you later.